사시히 perki 육생매도 잠리라랭지 니레견파리 상계행두 맥제유아히 교코남다신라 저파쇼 제촌라마 땅타케나 개체키칼라 겐세처치치 기타상배득세지마라 삽예처키자파 raptuso itam gururatnam dalakami achayami.
All right. So we're thinking, so the first one we'll say in English, I'll say it a bit longer. So we're thinking until we are enlightened, we're going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And then we think by the virtuous karma we create by listening to these teachings, may I become a Buddha to benefit all suffering sentient beings. Sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru jagni kyabsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru jagni kyabsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog. Okay. All right. So greetings from Adelaide. Adelaide is in Australia. It's in South Australia, the state called South Australia, and it's on the bottom, in the middle on the bottom, the South. Adelaide is called. Australia is bigger than, it's a very strange country. It's bigger than America. It's got 25 million people, which is about half the population of California, and 4/5 of the country live around the edge, just up the top on the left, on the right, Brisbane, then further down Sydney, further down Melbourne, across the middle, Adelaide, and over to the left, Perth, in the 5 cities. 4/5 of the country. 4/5 of the country is empty. It's a very curious country. Anyway, there you go. Wait a minute. I have to find something first. So let me just look at what we talked about last week. I think we talked last week, we really looked at the psychology. I think we looked at the psychology of Tantra, I want to look at the course in a second. I want to look at Tara's good, kind notes. So we're looking at, I think last week we looked at, we talked a lot about the different psychology, What was it? So tell me, Tara, in your words, roughly what we talked about mainly last week. What was it mainly?
Thank you, Campbell. Mainly, what did we talk about last week? My apologies.
Don't look at your notes. Just try to remember. Whatever it is, the essence of last week was mostly what? I know you do. Go on. What was the essence of last week?
At the end, we did end up talking about the psychology of Tantra and becoming Tara in the end.
About becoming the deity. Okay, that's
divine pride and divine pride.
That's it. Okay, thank you. So so we can see immediately, can't we? When we hear that, we can hear immediately. If we think about the very first, the lowest scope, all about the essence of the first scope, remember, is about understanding karma, learning to abide by the laws of karma, learning to control our behavior, learning to not kill and not steal and not lie. Why? Because that's why we suffer. So the essence behind, remember again, the essence, the logic behind all of Buddha's teachings from the very beginning until the very end, the logic is, the purpose is, the simple purpose is how to become a Buddha. Another way to put that is how to stop suffering and how to get happy. So the first two scopes are the wisdom wing, which is all about yourself, which is totally the Four Noble Truths, how to stop suffering. Buddha's entire thing is we suffer, and the point for the Buddha is we suffer. At least we're not happy. We are suffering and not happy. That's the way to put it. We're not happy. We suffer and therefore are not happy because we're not in touch with reality. That's really the main thing. The essence of it is that. We're not in touch with reality, which means our minds are mistaken, which means our minds have misconceptions. Our minds have misconceptions. So the very first level, there's no discussion really about the mind explicitly, as we know. It's all about the servants of the mind, the body and speech, causing trouble. So this body and speech are driven by the delusions, driven by the misconceptions, because the misconceptions are all about I. We've got the sense of a separate self, the root delusion that causes that, which gives rise to attachment, which gives rise to aversion, and the other dramas. So following them, the body and speech do actions that will try to get what the I wants. And this is utterly and completely and totally mistaken way to get happiness, Buddha says. And it's only what causes suffering to us. And because of this, we then even harm others, which continues to bring our own suffering like a nightmare, life after life. So the very first level of practice will control the servants of the delusions, at least stop following them. So the reason Buddha exhorts us not to harm others is because that will bring harm to oneself. That's what's behind the teachings in karma. What Buddha defines as a negative action is one that the grossest level of a negative action is one that harms another. But the reason he exhorts us not to do them is because that will create suffering for oneself. So at least we do this, harness the energy of the body and speech, calm ourselves down, abide by the laws of karma. That's the essence of the first scope. So for the result of that, if you graduated high school, graduated junior school, the first scope, you'll at least never get a lower realm rebirth. You'll continue to get a nice human rebirth, at least, minimum, bare minimum, a nice situation. Better than nothing, not bad, pretty good, actually. But you can do more. Now you go to the junior high school, you go to the middle scope, and now you can start to get to the root of the problem. And we now really focus on looking at the mind now, because we've begun to calm down we remember we've calmed down the servants of the mind. So now we can get into the mind itself. This is where we really become a Buddhist. And we particularly try to get in touch with attachment. Effectively, in this level of practice, for Buddha's Four Noble Truths, his explanation is we start to subdue attachment. And if we graduated here, you could say, we would then get shamatha, single point of concentration, and we would realize emptiness. And we would be out of here, honey child. We would be out of suffering. We would quit suffering altogether. We would have achieved our own nirvana because we've controlled the body, speech, and mind. We've quit the delusions. We are now in touch with reality. We are now in sync with reality. This is the middle scope. If we graduated then, we'd be out of samsara. How incredible. We can't even conceive of the joy and the bliss and the clarity, because Buddha is saying the nature of our mind is the nature of our mind is to be clear and happy, and we've achieved that. But now we've got the compassion wing. We're on the Mahayana path, so we could have achieved enlightenment by now. We could have achieved a small enlightenment by now. They put it like that. We could have achieved our own liberation, which is pretty incredible. But now we realize everybody else is in the same boat and we can't give up on sentient beings, So we now accomplish bodhicitta. We now shift the emphasis in the practices. We're so unbelievably together. We might not have achieved, the goal really for us on the Mahayana path isn't to get emptiness there. One could, but we achieve renunciation of suffering and its causes. So now we accomplish bodhicitta, this outrageous shift in the mind that only wants others to be happy and only wants to help others stop suffering. So this is like massively, powerfully more radical, more outrageous, more shocking, more marvelous. This bodhicitta, only existing for others now. And we then bop along from life to life, practicing the 6 perfections. The first 4 in relation to sentient beings, and the last 2 we actually here are then taught, and we would learn now to accomplish the last two, which is single point of concentration and wisdom. So now at this point, we can enter into Tantra, which is the most radical, the most, and quite a very radically different, again, a radically different approach, to achieving our potential. The same thing, it's all leading us to Buddhahood. If we're on the entire path to Buddhahood, then all of the teachings are leading us to Buddhahood in a nice, orderly way. But here, the emphasis is quite different. Now we can think having renunciation of suffering and its causes, having bodhicitta, and having the realization of emptiness, ideally having them, we're now totally qualified, totally perfect, totally qualified to speed up our process of becoming enlightened, because with this bodhicitta, the suffering of others is utterly unbearable. It is unbearable. As Lama Zopa says, unbearable compassion for the suffering of sentient beings. Then we will happily want to engage in Vajrayana, where we can use the brilliant skills that the holy beings have found that enable us to even utilize all the delusions on the path in order to quickly become enlightened. The technical reason that Tantra is said to be much quicker than the Paramita path is because we need to accumulate the two. They talk about the two accumulations, wisdom and method. We talk about the two wings all the time, the two accumulations. So we have to, in order to get enlightened, it's sort of like in order to get somewhere, you have to, in order to buy something very special, you have to accumulate lots and lots and lots of, I forget that one, doesn't matter. We have to accumulate, think that way, build up, accumulate lots of wisdom. We have to accumulate lots of wisdom, which gets us to realize emptiness. Then which we achieve with emptiness. And we have to accumulate lots of the other aspect, which is compassion, which we get that with bodhicitta. So with this Paramitayana path, you accumulate wisdom in meditation, in shamatha, on emptiness, achieving insight into emptiness. And then out of your meditation, you accumulate the other one. You accumulate compassion, or the method side, by working with sentient beings on the path. But Tantra is said to be very simply much quicker because you accumulate these two together in your meditation. I mean, I don't understand it. You accumulate them, the wisdom is the same, but by seeing yourself as the deity, the method side in Tantra is seeing yourself as a deity. The achieving of bliss, and seeing yourself as the deity, and simultaneously meditating with that blissful mind on emptiness. So you accumulate the two together. That's why it's said to be quick. That's the technical reason. So, okay, last week, I think really the one that, when we understand it, and the psychology of Tantra, Lama Yeshe, as I said, Lama Yeshe was taught so beautifully, kind of cut to the chase, and taught us about this and so this is, so we can really see the incredible difference just psychologically even in a day-to-day way, psychologically, we can see the effect of that, the benefit of that, just ordinary day-to-day life. This business of this wonderful attitude, this approach of divine pride, identifying well. So, and itself is the most radical approach to getting to lessening the deluded approach, the way of identifying ourselves with our delusions, especially if we're an ordinary person. If we've actually got realizations, we're okay. But most of us who are supposedly practicing Tantra, quote unquote, still completely identify with our delusions, see ourselves in this real bag of bones, see ordinary life as mundane, see everything as ordinary. And this is one of the most powerful things we're trying to do in Tantra. And when we take a highest yoga Tantra empowerment, and we take the vows in Tantra, the essence of the approach, we're vowing to see ourselves, to practice seeing ourselves as that deity, hearing and seeing all beings as a deity, hearing all sound as mantra, and seeing all the physical world as the environment of the deity. We're kind of practicing lifting our view, seeing everything as pure. The one way they talk in Tantra is about why we suffer. We suffer because, I mean, that never changes in Buddha's teachings. We suffer because we have ignorance, maripa, that believes in the intrinsic separate me, which gives rise to attachment, aversion, and the rest of the afflictions, right? That's why we suffer. That doesn't differ. But in the tantric view, because of this ego grasping, because of this intense identity with, because this causes us, these delusions cause us to see everything in a very mundane way, very gross way. So we practice in our practices, absolutely, but also day to day, programming our mind with lifting our game and seeing everything as transcendental, literally everything being in the nature of emptiness and bliss. So in the usual teaching, we talk about the two accumulation of wisdom, the accumulation of method, which is compassion. But here is the accumulation of wisdom and the accumulation of bliss. These are the two we combine. So you're learning. They say everything exists in the nature of bliss and emptiness. I mean, that sounds so utterly abstract to us. What are you talking about, you know? Because the whole of the samsara has been created, the whole of samsara, all of the realms of existence, the hell realms, the spirit realms, the animals, the humans, the gods, the anti-gods, even the form and formless beings, all of these different expressions of mental states combined with a certain kind of physicality are all gross at the grossest level, and then ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, until we eventually get to the formless realm, where there's not even any gross aggregates at all, you know. But in general, the samsaric one is we have these very gross, we see things in a gross way. So we're trying to train every day, and all this is part of our practice. It's not just when you're meditating on emptiness, seeing yourself as a deity, that you're doing this. You bring this into your daily life, you know, and practice. It's like programming your mind, practicing seeing yourself as a deity, imagining I'm the deity, remembering I'm the deity. And this is a cause of becoming the deity, you know. So psychologically, it's very radiant, it's very blissful, it's very light, it's very joyful, you know. And so I said from the very beginning, Lama Yeshe so kindly introducing us to these ideas in his wish to lift us up out of our, as he would say, out of the self-pity me. The self-pity me, you know, the suffering of this ego grasping and the attachment where we cling to everything so solid and mundane. Practice seeing things as transcendental, you know. That's how they talk. So the essence of two is, I mean, I think if you've read John Landau's course notes, I really hope you've done that, because he goes through all the points beautifully and in order, which I'm not doing. You know, the very first point is having the 3 prerequisites in order to enter into Tantra, which is another way from the Tsongkhapa. That's the 3 principal aspects of the path, as we discussed. And that's another way of presenting the lam-rim, basically. We need to have renunciation of suffering and its causes, which means understanding very deeply what suffering is and what causes it. Then, which in particularly means understanding, you know, the logic of it all, and particularly understanding attachment. Then we have bodhicitta, and finally we have emptiness. These 3 are the prerequisites. And then we're really ready to enter into Tantra, you know. We discussed, John Landau goes into that. We discussed that. And then we looked last week at how the attitude, the psychological approach. And then basically Tantra is also just psychology. All Buddhist teachings are basically about the mind. We talked about how Vajradhara or Dorji Chung is the tantric aspect of Buddha. And then under Vajradhara, you have all the 5 Buddha families. And then under those, you have all the millions of other Buddhas or deities, you know. And one other way of dividing very simply is they talk about Mother Tantra and Father Tantra. And these are just, and then there's a third called non-dual, something like that. But this is really referring to particular emphasis of the different practices that we have to combine in our deity yoga. So one is the Mother Tantra emphasizes the development of the clear light mind, which is the wisdom side, that side, if you like. And the other one, the Father Tantra, emphasizes the cultivation of the method side, the bliss, you know. And non-dual is something like, I'm not so sure even what that means, to be perfectly honest, so I won't say anything. And again, I remember there were another division. John Landau talks very nicely about this, the 4 levels of Tantra. So the ones we know, the popular practices like Tara, Chenrezig, all of these, you're permitted to do these practices without having received an empowerment, although you're not permitted to see yourself as the deity without an empowerment. But the highest yoga Tantra, which are the ones that have all the particular components that enable us to get enlightened. We need those to get enlightened. And maybe I'll just mention very briefly here the 4 components of the highest yoga Tantra empowerments or initiations. There are 4 initiations. They talk about 4 initiations. We need to have all of these in order to be able to become a Buddha. And so one of these 4, this highest yoga Tantra, the first one is there are 4 initiations that you receive within one of these initiations. There are actually many little initiations you receive, lots and lots of what they call initiations. In this one, for example, you're going to do Vajrayana, let's say, or Haruka Chakra Sambhara. And there are these 4 initiations within this. And the first one is called what's it called? I'll suddenly forget, I'm sorry, so ridiculous.
Is it action?
No, not that. That's a different thing. This is different. So I'm sorry, I'm confusing you as usual. I'm really sorry. No, there are 4 levels of Tantra. I'll start again, Tara. Thank you. It shows that I didn't say it properly because what you said was wrong, which meant I said the wrong words. So let me start again. But this is why I'm not being logical and coherent. I'm very sorry. No excuse. That's why you have to read John Landau's teachings, please. There are 4 levels of Tantra, 4 levels of practices. And John talks about this very nicely. And there are 4 different levels of utilizing certain things on the path. I'm not even going to discuss it. You have to read John Landau's notes. Please, I beg you. That's one discussion. Cancel that discussion. Now, within that, there's the highest one, and this is what I'm saying. Highest yoga Tantra is the 4th. So now, full stop, turn the page, and now we will look at highest yoga Tantra. And within that, you take an initiation. Often we can call it an empowerment, an initiation. Within that initiation, there are 4 initiations. And even within the first one, there are many small ones. So there are many initiations, but the 4 main ones. And we need these in order to get enlightened. So the first of these initiations is, what's it called, the first one? I completely forget. I'm sorry.
The base?
The vase, thank you very much. The vase initiation, as we say in English here, the vase Americans say. The vase initiation. And within that, there are many little ones. But this basically purifies your body and creates the cause to achieve the nirmanakaya, the emanation body. Basically. The next one is called the secret initiation, and that purifies your speech and creates the cause to achieve the enjoyment body, or the sambhogakaya. The third one is called the wisdom initiation, that purifies your mind. Again, the same themes are all there: body, speech, mind. The first one purifies your body, create the cause to get the emanation body, which is the nirmanakaya, which is the form, for example, behind us, Shakyamuni Buddha as the monk. That's called the supreme nirmanakaya, the form of the historical Buddha. At this time, it's Shakyamuni. But there are millions of nirmanakayas, not the supreme nirmanakaya. Nirmanakaya is the regular body. So the Buddha, by the time you're a Buddha, a Buddha can manifest their mind in any form they like. Their mind can conjoin with any set of the 4 elements anywhere, and that would be a Buddha. So a Buddha can conjoin their mind with the 4 elements that looks like a bridge. They always use that example, that looks like a tree, a rose, a dog, a human. They're all nirmanakayas. So all the, like this is why in Tibetan, the word tulku, emanation body, they're said to be emanations of the Buddha mind in human form. That's Nirmanakaya. The supreme Nirmanakaya, they call, is the founding Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. There are millions of Nirmanakayas. The Buddha has the ability to manifest their mind, conjoining their mind, put it that way, with the four elements anywhere, wherever the four elements are. That's where the Buddha can conjoin their mind with that, manifest as a tree, a cup, an iPhone, a person. This is interesting. Yeah, never mind. I won't say anything. That's enough. So that's the capability of a Buddha. The lowest level bodhisattva already has the capability to manifest in 100 different forms simultaneously for the benefit of sentient beings. And this is a very outrageous concept, isn't it? Because you see, when you look at the Vajrayana, we discussed this, the Vajrayana talks about how we have every mind in the universe. The universe consists of minds, and then there is matter. And matter is made of the four elements. That's it. And all minds, the Vajrayana, all minds are linked to their own set of the four elements. All minds are linked to their own set of the four elements. So a hell being, due to their intense negative karma and therefore this terrible suffering life, their mind is conjoined with their four elements. And you could argue that the predominant element for them is the fire element. Their mind is conjoined with fire. All elements have components of all four elements, is how they describe it. And we can see with a hell being, fire seems to predominate, A spirit, their mind is conjoined with the four elements, but they're suffering due to their negativity, due to attachment. The mind is conjoined with this kind of like subtle air, with air in it, and predominantly with air energy, so they can flit from pillar to post, they can enter into people, and they're not visible to our eyes, for example. You say that you could argue the air element is predominant. Now look at us humans and animals, at least at this moment in time, this time of history, this very degenerate time they talk about. Humans and animals, we look exactly the same. We both got these gross bodies, haven't we? So clearly the animals are more fancy looking. I was looking at some of those birds, their colorful bodies, and the lions and the slugs, the tiny animals and the big fat animals. Humans too, at this moment in time, we share the planet. This world we share with the animal realm, which is an indication of the really gross, mundane type of human birth we have at the moment. You listen to the teachings, we talk about eons before, a long time before even this planet. And remember, our minds are beginningless. All these delusions are beginningless. Therefore, all realms of existence are beginningless, because we make these realms. We create these realms with our delusions and our virtue. Then a human birth before this human birth, if we were fortunate to have had one, it was really more like a God realm in terms of, insofar as there were no gross elements, no gross physicality at all, So the humans, almost our bodies were like made of light, like the God realms. But in the God realms, you're carried away by bliss and you've got no dharma. But a human realm, we have very super intelligent minds. We lived a long, long time. We didn't have a gross body. And then gradually became degenerate. Attachment was there, but only latent. It began to grow. Dissatisfaction began to grow. And that made the mind more gross. It then made the elements more gross, because the body and mind are linked. Made the gross and made more gross the elements until the physical, until eventually we've created the karma to be born on a planet looking like a bunch of apes. It's a really gross rebirth, but still it's better, the best one, the human one. So then, as we know, you've got the God realms, their bodies, because of enormous virtue, their rebirth. Their elements are mostly manifesting as subtle light. The mind is very pure, but they just live in bliss and waste their lives, tip it down the toilet and get born in the lower realms again because they haven't realized emptiness, and so on and so forth. So the Nirmanakaya is the form of the Nirmanakaya emanation body, is the body the Buddhas manifest in to help sentient beings. So they can manifest as hell beings. But a Buddha can have looking like a hell being, manifesting for the sake of sentient beings. That's an Nirmanakaya. Buddhas can manifest as dogs, as ants, as slugs, anything they like, because they're totally powerful, totally have completely gone beyond regular delusions, regular suffering, and can do what they like. They're the Nimanakayas, and there are trillions of those. The supreme Nimanakaya is the form of the Buddha, in the founding Buddha, in this case, Shakyamuni. And the first initiation, the Vasa initiation, purifies the body and creates the cause to achieve that Nimanakaya. Then the second one, the secret initiation, purifies the speech and creates the cause to achieve the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body, which is all the deities, the ones that only the Arya bodhisattvas can cognize in their meditation, and the really high beings can cognize with their naked eye. The high beings can do that. There's always a story about Lama Zopa Rinpoche's guru, Khandrila. I don't know her long name. She's a guru of Rinpoche's, and he's also her guru. I know during the 2019 lam-rim course at Kopan, and I was there, Rinpoche laughed and said, "She's my first lady Lama," he said. So Lama Zopa says she got born as Vajrayogini. She'd done the work before, and she manifested as Vajrayogini. So there's stories of her when she's a little girl, like 11 or 12 or something, coming on her own from India to India, desperate to meet His Holiness, and she wanted to lead this. She wanted to do this long life puja for His Holiness, and she couldn't meet him because who's going to pay attention to some little girl? Nobody. This little girl wandering around Dharamsala looking homeless and ridiculous. I mean, who's going to say, "Oh, there's Vajrayogini"? Nobody can see, But apparently every time she saw His Holiness, she'd see the Sambhogakaya, so she'd faint, or whatever. So anyway, eventually she met Kirti Sancham Rinpoche. She was desperate to get to see His Holiness. And he, of course, recognized who she was. And he said, "I will build a golden bridge between you and His Holiness." So she introduced him. And so, of course, His Holiness could see who she was. And she wanted to do this big, fat, full-on, long-life puja. There's so many stories about it. It's the only ones I know. And so His Holiness told the monks, his monks, to do exactly what she said. So one thing she did, I heard, down in Dharamsala, I haven't been there, there's some cave where Talopa had meditated, one of these great yogis, great Mahasiddhas. And there was some rock there, or the rocks there. Anyway, she asked the monks to give her a little vase, a little container. So she picked up a rock and she squeezed the rock, and yellow nectar came out of it, and she filled this little container, and she offered this to His Holiness at the puja, and he drank the lot. So she's a holy being. That's what people say. I can't see her. You see a very cute lady when you see her. She's cute, but to say that she's Vajrayogini, you have to be clairvoyant. So the second initiation, the secret initiation, creates the cause. It purifies our speech and creates the cause to achieve the Sambhogakaya, the subtler form. Okay. The third one, the wisdom initiation, purifies our minds and helps us achieve the Dharmakaya, which is known, literally they refer to it as the truth body, emanation body, enjoyment body, truth body. The first is the purification of the physical body. The second is the purification of our speech. The third is the purification of the mind. It's the same themes all throughout Buddhism, isn't it? So now we achieve, this is where we achieve the Dharmakaya. And the fourth one, they call that the word initiation. It's where you perfect all these realizations and you finally achieve, you achieve, there's a way of saying it, I think, the two truths. Something like that. And they would actually, another way they say that, I think, is you accumulate, I'm not so sure about that, I can't say. I'm not so sure, but it's like perfecting it, perfecting all of these three. Something like, sorry, I can't even say that. Don't write down what I say, Tara, please. I mislead you people so badly. Let me get the right words. If I'm going to say them, let me get the right words. I'm just so bad. Where's John? I'll find John's course notes. I have to find them. I might just find something else. Wait, just a minute. And just say to you, at least I say the right words instead of misleading you, sending you to the hell realms or something. That would not be appropriate, would it? would not be cool. You can blame me. The Rabina said it. Rabina caused us. You can totally blame me. I'm sorry. I'm happy to take the blame. I'm at fault. No, I'm just looking at something here. Okay, I'll show you. I'll tell you the right words. Well, let me tell you the right words for each one properly, completely. There's a few more things I can say, which are these 4 initiations do. So the vase initiation, as I said, just a moment. I'm taking from a text here. Okay. So you think you've purified the stains of the body, all the common negative karmas accumulated in the past, such as killing and taking the ungiven, from now on, so that you've purified the body and all the stains. So then you purify also of seeing your body as ordinary and of believing in that ordinary appearance, seeing your body as ordinary and believing in that ordinary appearance. You purified that. You've received, this is the extra piece, you've received the permission to meditate on the generation stage of Tantra. And you've purified now your body into a Vajra body, they say. And it leaves the potential to achieve the Nirmanakaya. So as I said before, but a bit longer words, you purified the body. You've received permission, I didn't say this one, to practice the generation stage, which I'll try and explain later. And you've achieved the potential to receive the Nirmanakaya. Okay. Now the secret initiation, you purify your speech, all the general stains of speech. You've purified the particular stain, the general one of the speech. The one before was the general one of the body, and the particular one of seeing your body as mundane and believing in that. Here, you purify generally the negativity of speech, and you purify in particular. Okay, this is very nice. You purify in particular, specifically in relation to speech, you purify the particular stain of seeing and apprehending the wind energy and mantra as separate. The wind energy is why we can speak, why we have sound. Wind is sound. This is in Tantra. Wind is sound, and speech is sound, isn't it? And this is the greatest gift of the Buddha, these clever words that come out of our mouth. Really analyze. It's just very, very clever, unbelievable, complicated sounds with our tongue, isn't it, we make? And they're called words. And what are words? They're the manifestation of thoughts. And this is what Buddha, how kindly Buddha manifests in a body with words to benefit us, ignorant sentient beings, by giving us the teachings. So with a secret initiation, you purify all the mistakes of speech generally, and in particular, you purify this view, the belief and the apprehension of the wind and the mantra being separate. So you're training yourself in Tantra to see all sound as mantra, because reality is the wind energy is sound, and the purest sound is mantra, which is Sanskrit. This is how they talk. All right. And also, your purified speech is now transformed into the holy Vajra speech, and you've purified all your channels, your winds and your drops, which is the construction. We're going to go into this today, but I'm getting to what we're going to talk about today, these kayas, these bodies. We're going to discuss that in particular in relation to the death process. It's quite handy. And now you've also received the permission to meditate on the illusory body. There's different levels of this. It's called the illusory body. And eventually that causes you to achieve the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. All right. Now, so these, in other words, in these initiations, highest yoga tantra, you receive all the things that are necessary for you to actually become a Buddha. So now the wisdom initiation, this purifies your delusions, the mind. Let me just get it. The stain, so it's, you purify all your the mind, all the stain, the regular stains of all the delusions, and then also you it purifies the stains, particularly it purifies the mistake, the stain that obscures you from seeing everything that appears as the manifestation of bliss and emptiness. Purifies that. Generally, it purifies the delusions, and specifically, it purifies the stains in the mind that obscure our seeing everything that appears as manifestations of bliss and emptiness. And your mind transforms into the Vajra holy mind, and then you receive permission to meditate on, to meditate on the clear light and to achieve the Dharmakaya, the truth body, the mind, the actual mind of a Buddha. Are we clear? These I'm quoting from this particular text here, put together by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So finally, the word initiation, the fourth one. This purifies the general subtle stains of body, speech, and mind. So in other words, this is looking in the sutra way of saying this. When you've achieved liberation, nirvana, you've realized emptiness and perfected it. You can't come back into samsara, you're finished. But by adding bodhicitta to the mix, you purify extra subtle stains that enable you then to become a Buddha, which is so infinitely more powerful than being an arhat, you know. So this is sort of the equivalent in Tantra. So then, or another way to put it is, when you become a Buddha, finally, you see the two truths, you achieve the union of the two truths. You simultaneously cognize conventional and ultimate reality. So here, purify the general subtle stains, and then also in particular, it purifies what they call subtle dual view. And this initiation leaves the special potential to achieve the unified state of Vajradhara. That's how they talk. This is how they talk, okay? So, of course, this is technical. All these are technical. It's a technical. As Lama says, Tantra is highly technical. It's extraordinarily sophisticated, you know. So these four initiations have all the components that purify the gross body, speech, and mind, purify dual view, the final two, you know, purify all the stains of that, and enable us to actually become a Buddha. So by doing these practices together, by doing these practices, as I said, it's a super quick path to Buddhahood, simply because you're achieving the two accumulations together in one session. That's how they put it. That's how they put it. Okay, so what I thought was just these words, Nimanakaya, and at least the three kayas, forget the fourth one. That's called, the fourth kaya sometimes is referred to, never mind that, so cancel that. We're going to now look at how we can purify body, speech, and mind, and through the death process, and purify dying into the Nimanakaya, the bardo into the Sambhogakaya, and rebirth into the Nimanakaya. Okay, do you remember, Tara, in your course notes, did I read from Lama Zopa Rinpoche's chapter in How to Face Death Without Fear?
At the very end. Yes, you did.
I did read that. This is last week.
Yeah, last week you read.
Okay, good. This is great. That's what I wanted to talk about this week. So I'm going to do this again for you to hear it, and then we will go into just trying to get the simple points of how the death process can be utilized, why it is such a brilliant method for becoming a Buddha in this very lifetime. That's how they talk about it. So let me read Lama's book again, the chapter from the death process, from the chapter from this book of Rinpoche's called How to Face Death Without Fear, just to give you the taste again. And we'll go through that briefly, just briefly, try and understand it, okay? All right, so far, are there any questions, please? Okay, fine. Yes, there's a question there, Tara, isn't it? No? Okay. All right, people. Let me just read briefly from Lama's book, Rinpoche's book. Hang on a second. I have to find it. It's very cold here in Adelaide. It's winter here, remember? And September was quite chilly. I'm in what they call the Adelaide Hills, about 20-minute drive. It's a little city, 2.5 million people. Well, it's probably bigger than Zurich, I don't know. But it's quite chilly here. We have a retreat center on a little island just south, and it's called Kangaroo Island. Hang on a minute. Where's my thing? I'm looking for this book. Wait, won't be long. Lama Nishe. Where are we? Kopan. Death. Okay, here we go. Death reprint. Death. Here we go. This one. This is the one. I think I even gave it to you as a. Didn't I send it to you? Or did I send it to you? Okay,
No.
I've got it as a PDF. I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to put it on the thing right now. This chapter from the book. I'm going to send it to you right now. Let me send it to you right now, Tara.
Okay.
I prepared it as a PDF for people. So I'll send it to you right now. So it's good to have it and read it as I'm reading. You can see it yourselves. Hang on. I have to find it again. I just put it away. Here we go. I think I did. No. Okay. There you go. I just sent it. Just now. You'll get it now. We'll go through it together.
Did you send it to my email, Venerable?
Well, if I say I send it to you, where would I send it by?
You could the DB email address.
Well, that's what I use, darling. Why would I send it anywhere else? Because I'm saying I'm sending it to
I
you.
know. There it is. Got it. I'll upload it. Let me download and upload. Thank you.
So there's a spelling mistake already. But never mind.
Tara will post the text in the chat for everybody to get.
Yes.
Okay, so basically, this is how Rinpoche talks about it. It's possible to get enlightened at the time of death. So generally, it's not permissible. So Rinpoche says death is the moment that the yogis have been waiting for. At the point in the death process when all the grosser consciousness have ceased, and only the extremely subtle consciousness is left, often known as the clear light consciousness, the yogis, those who have observed karma well, kept their precepts purely, spent their lives training their minds in the clear light meditation, and have been able to recognize the base time clear light, that is, the imagined visualized one, are now able to recognize, you could say, the actual clear light, the clear light of death. So the clear light is used to refer to the very subtle mind. It's also used to, and then it's so the one you imagine, the base time, and then there's the actual one that comes at the time of death. And then if that one is transformed, that's the actual clear light. That becomes the Dharmakaya. So they can remain in meditation in the clear light, conjoined with emptiness for as long as they wish. 1 hour, 3 days, many months. I mean, so for example, Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe remained in meditation for at least 5 days. His Holiness Root Guru Nyingma Rinpoche, he stayed in meditation for 13 days. So there are many examples like this, as Lama Zopa says. And now, page 3, I'm on page 3. By concentrating in this subtlest state without distraction, some practitioners achieve enlightenment at this time. So let's look at that before we go further. This is the point. The death process is that, as you know, as is described in these 8 stages, they call it dissolution, or we can say deconstruction of all the bits and pieces of a person. So they divide into 8 stages, and at each of these 8 stages, various things cease to function. And we can go through this. Let's go through this, because this is straight from this system, is this death process is described in the Vajrayana. And the sort of the 25 things all together. So let me get another copy of another Rinpoche's book out, and we'll go through the death process itself. This is the very essential, actually central practice, meaning in the essence, that incorporates this ideas of these different kayas, and this marvelous opportunity for the greatest yogis who've practiced all their lives in their meditation, are able to stay in control at each of these stages. Our mind gets more subtle, whether you're a dog or anything. It'll happen to everybody, but they are aware of the process. That's the point. And they can literally utilize this marvelous opportunity of the mind getting ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, naturally. They've made all this enormous effort in their work, in their meditations in daily life, by getting shamatha and practicing tantra, and they've made the effort to get their mind to a more subtle level. But that enables them to be easily conscious at these more subtle levels during the natural process of the mind getting more subtle, which is called death. And this is the key point, is that because the clear light mind of death is the most subtle of the experiences of extremely subtle mind. With shamatha, the mind is not subtle enough, the Sutra practices. Even the greatest yogis in Tantra can't get their mind to the subtlest level. In Tantra, at the highest level, the only way in daily life to get your mind to the subtlest level is to achieve the bliss of being in union with a wisdom mother or a consort. That's the only way, the only method that's available for the mind to get to the subtlest level in daily life. So if you don't want to do that, you wait for death, and your mind gets to the very subtlest level at the time of death, at the subtlest level. That's the only time it happens. So there's this incredible opportunity. As Lama Zopa says, death is what they've been waiting for, this marvelous opportunity when the mind is naturally at the very subtlest level. And in order to remove all the obstacles from the mind and become a Buddha, you need to get to that very subtle level. So it's a technical point, you know. I hope we're communicating. As Lama Yeshe says, Tantra is highly technical. Okay. Where are we? Where's the book? All right. I have to find it. Death picks Buddha's proofs. Here we go. That's no good. Death. Here we go. Sample death. Final marks. That's not it. I'm sorry. It won't be long. final death is what they're emerging from now. Here we go. This will do. Okay. All right. So now we go through this 8 stages of deconstruction of a person that we can practice meditating on. So I'll go back and forth between reading this chapter of Rinpoche's about how the yogis can utilize, and then try to do some explaining from the chapter on the yogis, on the death process itself. Okay. So now wait a minute, people, excuse me. What happens at death? 12 links. The stages of death. Here we go. Death is what the yogis are emerging from. All right, 47. 47. 47. Here we go. The stages of death, intermediate state, and rebirth. So the first, each of these 8 stages is described in terms of a certain vision that occurs in the mind, something that occurs in the mind, as like they're like sort of like signposts. And one practices imagining these different signposts, if you like. So the first is a vision of a mirage, it's called that. So there are various things that deconstruct, if you like. They say dissolve, or, the word we use, dissolve, they say. So the first one, the 5 things at each of these stages, all this is in the book, in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's book. And there's, of course, this is in many teachings of Rinpoche's all over, but this is where you're going to find them. And there's a meditation on this in the back in the sections. So this is Lama Zopa's book, How to Face Death Without Fear. So the first thing to dissolve, the first of these 25 components is the 25 components, we'll say that in advance, the 25 components of a person that all gradually deconstruct, cease at the time of death. Where are they? Talk about this somewhere. I'll go through this. Yeah, here we are. They're the various things. Okay, the 5. So these are the components of a person. This is from Tantra, okay? I'll read out, this is from a previous chapter, the components of a person. So in order to better understand the process of death, it's helpful to understand what makes up a person. So the first is the 5 aggregates. This is from a teaching of the Buddhas in the Sutras, where he divided us up into 5 bits, We're made of more bits, but these 5 he talks about. So there's form is the first one. This is the first component of these 25, the first grouping of the 25, the 5 aggregates. So the first of these, and this is not Tantra. The 5 aggregates is Sutra teachings. One learns about it in Sutra, but it's described in the process. So the process of death. So the first is form, which is referring to the body. Then the second 2 are feeling and discrimination. They're 2 of the mental factors that we experience every moment. And these are very vital ones. Why Buddha pointed these out in particular among all the 51 mental factors is because they're very powerful role they play in our experiences of creating samsara. Feeling, which is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and then discrimination, which is the ability to discriminate between this and that every millisecond. And then the next one, that's the second, the third, that's 3, that all the remaining mental factors, jealousy, patience, love, and so on, are included in the aggregate of, Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls it the compounding aggregates, which is very hard for us to understand, doesn't we mean, or they call it sometimes compositional factors. It's like a little grab bag of leftover bits and pieces, including the different mental factors and other things as well that are impermanent. And the 5th of the 5 aggregates is known as consciousness, which refers to the 5 sense consciousnesses and the mental consciousness. They're the 5 aggregates. So at each of these stages of death, these gradually cease to function. Then you've got the 4 elements, made up of the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water. They deconstruct at various stages. Then you've got gross, another way of another way of describing all the stages of death is into, we've got gross consciousness, which is what ceases, that's the sensory, and that ceases at the 4th stage. Then you've got subtle consciousness, which cease at the 5th, 6th, and 7th stage. And then you've got extremely subtle consciousness, which is the 8th one, the 8th stage. So as Rinpoche says, the gross body is the one we have now. The subtle one is made up of the, and this is coming next now, we've got the channels, the 72,000 subtle channels, our subtle nervous system, from the tip of our head to the toes. Our entire body is pervaded by these subtle channels, like a subtle nervous system. And then coursing through these channels are all the different winds, the different pranas, the wind energies. This is the knowledge of the Indian system and then like the Tibetan medical system, for example, and this is totally the Vajrayana, all the different wind energies. And then they got the chakras, which are basically these various points throughout the body where all these different channels are all constricted at different points, and the winds are blocked. And because our minds ride on the winds, all sentient beings' minds are inextricably linked to their own set of the 4 elements, the wind energy, sorry, the winds, and or the 4 elements actually. And so the mind and the winds are inextricably linked, coursing through all these channels. So your anger's got its own wind energy, your love has got its own wind energy. So your Tibetan doctor, she can feel the imbalance of certain winds when she feels your pulses, and she can feel the imbalance of the certain winds that are linked to your attachment, and that's why you're having panic attacks, for example. So winds and mind are inextricably linked, and this is how we create karma. The actions we do purify or either grow virtue in our mind or grow delusions in our mind. So if we grow virtue, then that becomes a habit, and then it affects the wind energy, which purifies your wind energy, and then in the future that brings you good health in your body and eventually impacts upon the external elements, which causes them to all behave nicely and be harmonious. This is the fruit of virtue, and if it's non-virtue, it's the opposite. So these 3 components, the channels, winds, and chakras. So the wind energy of the subtle body, more subtle than the air we breathe, carry our mind through a system of 72,000 channels throughout the body. It's you know, they talk about how it rides on the winds, they say. So the main channels are the central channel and the right and left channels. They are in the center of the body, measuring between the 2 breasts and a little closer to the back. They're just in front of your spine, basically. At various points along these channels, there are chakras, the main ones being at the crown, the throat, the heart, the navel, the tip of the sex organ. For the male, that's the penis, and for the female, that refers to right at the cervix. That's the end of the central channel in the female body. The 2 side channels do not run straight down either side. Oh. Oh yeah, but wrap around it at the chakras, forming knots. So this is what we have to, you see, the whole point of all these practices is to get our mind to the very subtle level. So because your mind is linked to these winds, and because at these various chakras, all the channels are knotted, the winds can't go into the central channel and become more subtle. So that's why it's hard to get to sleep. That's why it's hard to concentrate. And this is why we have to achieve concentration, which it forces, using the tantric model, it unknots those chakras, and the winds can go past those knots and can all get into the central channel and all get to the heart chakra. That's the goal. And at death, that happens naturally. And the yogis have spent their lives practicing these techniques of getting concentration, which enables the knots to be unknotted, and the winds, which carries your mind to go through this from the grosser level throughout the entire body, all to come into the central channel, and not only the central channel, but all to come and gather at the heart chakra. And that, when that happens, you've now ceased the grosser levels of mind, even the subtle level of mind, and you've got to the very subtle level. You've now accomplished the clear light, and staying conscious during that point through these stages is what the yogis can do. And then they practice meditating with their clear light mind, the subtlest level of their mind, and they become a Buddha. That's what you do. You become a Buddha at that point. The other components are these red and white drops. So at the moment, or they sometimes, at the moment, of conception, at the moment of conception, our consciousness mixes with the red drop, or they sometimes refer to it in the Vajrayana as the bodhicitta, or Lama Yeshe would refer to it as the kundalini. That's a Sanskrit word for it. From the mother, and the white drop from the father. So at the moment of conception, when our consciousness, this is me talking now, our consciousness has left the other body, our previous body, is thinking of our mummy and daddy now. Our consciousness left the, when we died, a virtuous karmic seed was triggered before we even stopped breathing, which was the seed that drove us to our present mother's human womb. So then we went through the death process. And then when we left the body, our mind did the reverse stages and entered into the intermediate state, the bardo. So we're kind of hanging around there, which is like a subtle state, like a dream state. It's a subtle mind, waiting for our new mummy and daddy to hop into bed, right? So when they did, and their egg and sperm joined in the fallopian tube, I think, of your mum, that's when your consciousness runs instantaneously and rushes there, and your clear light mind joins this red drop from your mummy. And the red drop is a subtler level of the so-called egg of the mother. And then it joins that and the subtle white drop, which is a subtle level of the sperm of the father. And our consciousness joins that subtle red and white drop. So the essence of the white and red bodhicitta, they call it the indestructible drop, with its red and white halves, the size of a tiny bean, abides at the very center of our heart chakra. That's the first moment of the beginning of you. Your consciousness joins that very subtle, that subtle red and white drop, and that stays at your heart chakra. And then from there, you grow in the fetus out from the heart chakra. You grow, you gradually develop the other, and this human body. But this red and white, this indestructible drop, which you got from your mother and father at the time of conception, it stays there all the time. So part of the, also they say, part of the white bodhicitta also abides at the crown chakra and part of the red at the navel chakra. And in other commentaries, you hear that actually throughout all the channels, there are these red and the white drops, the red and the white kundalini are there. So our conjoined, extremely subtle wind and extremely subtle consciousness reside in the indestructible drop at the heart. So now, the clear light of mind, Rinpoche is saying, this is general, and then we'll go through the stages in a minute. So while we are alive, the knots at the chakras prevent the winds from entering into and flowing in the central channel. The point is this: right now, when we're wide awake and wound up, the winds, the winds are going through all our channels no matter what, and our states of mind are connected to those winds. So we live at the conceptual level and have our sensory consciousness. So when you go to sleep, it's exactly the same process as death. When you go to sleep, what's happening is the wind energies are leaving all the side channels. And then because the winds are stopping in all the side channels, the states of mind, like your regular level of mind, stop. They cease because the winds have gone into the central channel. And that's what we're trying to accomplish in the meditation. So then eventually the winds get more subtle and the mind gets more subtle. And this happens at death as well. And all of it finally at the 8th stage, now the only level of your mind you've got, the grosser levels have all ceased, all your sensories have ceased, all your gross mental states have ceased. All there is left is your very subtle consciousness, your clear light consciousness. And that is at the heart chakra. And that's linked with its own wind. That's the goal of the yogis throughout their entire life, practicing, accessing their very subtle consciousness, having all the winds dissolve into the central channel, which means the grosser minds cease because they ride on the wind. If the wind is not there, there's no mind. That's what happens when we go to sleep. And when we can't sleep is because we can't, these blocks of the chakras, of the winds, which carry our mind, that you know, we can't go to sleep. It makes us crazy. You know, we stay up all night chatting, isn't it? Our poor heads. We know about that. So the yogis have complete control over this, but they're spending their lives practicing, the great tantric yogis. So throughout their lives, so okay, the heart chakra, at which point, so okay, when your mind finally gets to the very subtle mind, the heart chakra, and with this we can now meditate. I'll start again. While we are alive, the knots at the chakras prevent the winds from entering into and flowing in the central channel. Otherwise, these various winds and the states of mind associated with them would all dissolve. We want them to dissolve into the indestructible drop of the heart chakra, at which point our extremely subtle consciousness, the mind of clear light, would manifest, and with it we could meditate on emptiness and thus free ourselves from all the delusions and eventually become enlightened. So in other words, what these amazing tantric yogis and these Hindus before the Buddha have found in these genius methods are methods to completely harness the energy of the mind and the body. I mean, it's totally insane. It's outrageous. It's so outrageous. It's so sophisticated. It's so extraordinary, you know. They've discovered these methods, you know. So the Vajrayana is the utilization of these methods. So throughout our lives, the great meditators train their minds to do this. Lama Yeshe, for example, in his daily tantric practice, was able to experience the various visions of the dissolution process that occur naturally at death. We're going to go through these. In other words, he didn't need to wait until death to experience them. Lama was able to open the chakras, causing the winds to enter into and flow in the central channel and dissolve at the heart chakra. In other words, he was able to cease all the gross levels of consciousness, all the gross levels of mind, of body, and get his wind energy and his subtle and his mind into the heart chakra, where the very subtle mind is there, kind of like, it's almost like awakening the very subtle mind. I like to think of it as the microscope of your mind, and then you're able to meditate on emptiness. And you do this through the entire process of death anyway. And then because the mind is the subtlest, you're able to utilize that to get enlightened, to remove all the obstacles, all the obscurations. So therefore, at the time of death, great yogis can remain in meditation in the clear light for as long as they like, which is what happened with Lama. And now Lama Zopa gives a rough explanation now of the death, intermediate state, and rebirth. And then we'll go through the 8 stages. So the process of death occurs in 8 stages. And as he says here, I explained in chapter 9, we're going to do that. And is experienced by those who have bodies constituted from the sperm of the father and the egg of the mother, human beings and some animals. During the first 4 stages, we experience the gradual dissolution, or if you like, the deconstruction. They don't use that word, but I like that, of 22 of the 25 components, 4 of the 5 aggregates, 4 of the 5 types of wisdom. We'll go into these certain capacities of the mind that enable us to function. They call them these five types of wisdoms. We'll go into these. The 4 elements, 5 of the 6 sense bases, and the 5 inner sense objects. All this is in Lama Zopa's book, okay, in the chapter called What Happens at Death. You know. Okay, so now, these are the 25 components. We'll go through those when we go in a minute. So the breath has stopped by the end of the 4th stage. And by then, gross consciousness, your 5 sense consciousnesses, have ceased. And that's what happens asleep as well. When you're fast asleep, same thing. So now, during the final 4 stages, the remaining 3 of the 25 components gradually cease. The 5th aggregate, consciousness, the 5th wisdom, and the 6th sense base. I'll describe these in a minute. By the 8th stage, all that is left is the extremely subtle wind conjoined with the extremely subtle consciousness, the mind of clear light, at the indestructible drop at the heart chakra. Death occurs when the indestructible drop which you got from your mummy and daddy at the time of conception, subtler levels of the egg and sperm, when that drop splits open and the conjoined, extremely subtle wind and mind leaves the body, that's death. And that can be 3 days after you've stopped breathing. However, for ordinary people, the mind can stay in the body for up to 3 days after the breath stops, although they are not aware of it. So we've done this, we've died billions of times, but we've never been aware of this process, and we've never used it. That's why death is what the yogis have been waiting for. The great yogis, as I mentioned, can meditate in the clear light for as long as they like. As soon as the mind leaves the body, we take a life, between this life and the next, called the intermediate state, or the bardo. And up to 49 days later, we will take a new rebirth. So the thing is about the bardo, which talks about that other places, not here at this moment, the bardo, the experience of the bardo is totally dependent on the karmic seed that was triggered at about the 2nd or 3rd stage, which already has determined your future rebirth. Already that's kind of programmed in advance. By the time you've stopped breathing, the karmic seed has been triggered. That's why I was so wanting to get back to Melbourne to see my sister Jan, because she fell down the stairs and died. She didn't die immediately, and she was brain dead. And I begged my sisters and my brother to please keep her alive for another 2 days until I got there, because she was still breathing. When she's still breathing, even artificially, the karma hasn't been triggered yet for her next rebirth. And I really wanted her to have the chance for, His Holiness she was on the list for His Holiness, Lama Rinpoche, another Lama, Young Rinpoche in Portland, another Lama I'm close to called Panchen Lama in Ireland, many people doing prayers for her while her mind was still in the body. And then even though she stopped, we pulled the plug on her in the hospital, but still her mind could still have been there. And so because they had to do it, because they had to send her to the coroner, so they had to put her in the fridge at the hospital. So the nurse was very kind when I had to leave. And she said she was going to clean her. I said, no, don't touch her. Try and be very gentle and put her in the fridge very gently. So they did that. So if her mind was still there, all these prayers were having an effect, But when she stopped breathing, the karmic seed would have been triggered. And her next birth determined, So the bardo is very much, if it's going to be a suffering rebirth, the bardo is like a terrible, terrible experience, like terrible nightmares. So now chapter 9, the death process. So are there any questions so far? You just have to have these teachings. You can't memorize all this. You have to read the teachings and get Lama Zopa's book, which is about death, but there's a lot of good information about this in there. Are there any questions?
Terry has a question.
Who, darling? Who?
Terry.
Yes, hello. Yes, go.
Hello.
Yes,
okay. Actually, I want to say thank you, because this is the last teaching online that we're having this time, right? So I want to say
darling.
thank you.
Yes.
And I want to say that there's a whole lot of Buddhist studies for me personally to go through again and again. And it's going on. I'm going to study a little bit longer after the course ends by my
I'm very happy, Jerry. You keep doing that.
I will. I will.
And good job, darling.
Thank you. And I started the business education just one and a half weeks ago.
You did do it. I'm very happy, sweetheart. It's going well.
Yes.
I'm very pleased, darling.
So am I.
I'm very pleased, Jerry. Well done, darling.
Starting to build up a foundation for a spiritual caretaking center, kind of.
Good, sweetheart. Well done. Good,
Thank
Terry.
you.
Keep moving,
Thank
darling.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Yes, Linda and Dave.
Thank you. I'm not sure how to ask this, but I'm wondering, and I think His Holiness has looked into this to some extent, is there a resource or a reference or a book relating current neuroscience to the wind energies and the sort of the different...
I'm sure there. I don't know about. I'm sure there have to be, because of His Holiness. So many scientists now are involved. So I don't know which books they are. You're going to have to really search. I do not know that. Absolutely, I do not know.
Okay, thank you.
There have to be. They have to be. His Holiness talks about this, Yes.
I know,
So-
and I don't know how to sort of map it. So
I know,
thank you.
no, there's definitely literature out there. But another really good book, by the way, I can recommend for the death process is this wonderful commentary by His Holiness on a text by the Panchen Lama. And translated by and edited by Jeffrey Hopkins. And I think it's called The Mind of Clear Light. And the subheading is Death and Dying or something like that. And it's a lovely commentary in more detail than Rinpoche's, because it's only on that death process by His Holiness. I think it's called The Mind of Clear Light. Everybody, it's a wonderful book explaining more detail the different things that occur at death. And very nice book.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thanks, sweetheart. So now let's go through these 8 stages, just roughly, okay? I'll just mention them. And it's all here, so you have to practice it. And this is where they say, as Rinpoche says, let me go back to the other book. Let me go back now, just reading briefly now, that chapter of Rinpoche's, the yogi, death is what the yogi's been waiting for. Okay. So now, you too can transform death, intermediate state, and rebirth. The practices these yogis do are available to those who have taken a highest Tantra initiation. So this is the thing, when you've got the 3 prerequisites, you've practiced, you've taken refuge, you've got your lay vows, you're really sincere in your practice, you've got confidence in the path, perhaps you've taken the bodhisattva's vows already, you're then technically qualified to receive an empowerment, And so eventually, a highest yoga Tantra. So, for example, in our tradition, we've got Yamantaka, for example, Vajrayogini, Heruka Chakra Samvara. There are many across all the traditions, but there are some that are specific to certain traditions. For example, there's a deity called Vajra that's particularly practiced in the Sakya tradition. But commonly among us, on the Gelugpas, we have Yamantaka. The 3 main tantras we have are Yamantaka, Gyuya Samaja, which is the Father Tantra, the main Tantra, Father Tantra, Chakra Samvara, Heruka Chakra Samvara, which is a Mother Tantra, but also Vajrayogini, she's Mother Tantra. And then there's Yamantaka, he's often referred to as non-dual. I don't really understand, but never mind. Then all the many other deities in highest Yoga Tantra. And these are the ones that you need in order to have to receive, as I said before, to purify the body, speech, mind, to receive the permission to achieve these 3 bodies, And then the 4th one, the word initiation. They are only all contained in the highest Yoga Tantra, and you need all of these literally, technically, to become a Buddha. That's the point. The practices these yogis do are available to those who've taken a highest Tantra initiation. They are the quickest methods for achieving enlightenment in one brief lifetime of this degenerate time. Then when they say degenerate time, they mean when it's not this previous type of human birth that lasted for 1,000 years, where we had subtle light bodies before this planet, obviously. That's what they mean by degenerate, because the life only lasts like 50, 60, 70 years. So by doing these practices, you can collect in just a few years the merit that would otherwise take you 3 countless great eons to collect on the Sutra path. In other words, as I said before, the technical reason why the Paramitayana practices of achieving Buddhahood, which is all those practices in the lam-rim, you accumulate wisdom in your meditation, and then you accumulate merit bopping around in life after life, practicing the first 4 perfections. But in Tantra, you accumulate the 2 together. That's why it's said to be so quick. These practices have a very special arrangement. And doing the sadhana, this word, I don't know what it translates as. Do you learn what it translates? Do you know this, Caroline? Do you learn what that means in Hindu? Do you know? Okay. The complete sadhana, not just simply generating yourself as the deity and reciting the mantra without the mandala, not like that, is a very important preparation for death. You will understand this when you have received the commentaries on the generation stage and the completion stage practices. Whether you do the long version of the sadhana of the deity you are committed to do, or the middle length version, they both contain the essence of the generation stage practice. So the generation stage practice, there's two stages. They talk about generation stage and completion stage. So the generation stage, as Rinpoche says, in which you transform the three experiences of death, intermediate state, and rebirth into the three bodies. So Rinpoche says even the short Yamantaka sadhana, for example, has these three important points. So by meditating in this way, you prepare your mental continuum by purifying ordinary death, ordinary intermediate state, and ordinary rebirth, enabling you to actualize the path-time Dharmakaya at the time of death, the path-time Sambhogakaya, the intermediate state, at the intermediate state, and the path-time Nirmanakaya, rebirth, thus planting the seeds to achieve the result time, three bodies. So the base, they talk about the base time, these three, is just the existence of these three states. Then the path time is when you're practicing, and the actual ones that are what you achieve from practice. When you just recite the words, there is, of course, a positive imprint left on your mind, but you're not strongly preparing your mind as you would if you were to actually meditate. Sokon Sencham Rinpoche, Rinpoche's gurus, used to emphasize very much that if you are busy and can't do much meditation in the deity sadhanas, when it comes to your daily commitments, you should do more elaborate meditations for your main deity. You can do your other sadhanas quickly. So of course, when one takes these empowerments, one eventually feels, or sometimes even before, one feels a connection with one particular Buddha. That becomes your yidam, the one in which you mainly practice in this life, and that's the one that suits your personality for this life, you know. However, in all your sadhanas, you must do the three kayas meditation, even if it's not elaborate, even if you don't follow the extensive procedures, you should at least meditate on the last point. Rinpoche first here's the four qualities of the foundation: having the divine pride, thinking, this is the result time Dharmakaya, this is me. I'll discuss that later. So then on the day you die, because you have trained your mind by doing your sadhanas every day, you are able to recognize what's happening, the 25 stages of dissolution without missing any, just as you had meditated. Because your mind is well trained, you are able to recognize the clear light, and during the intermediate state and at the time of birth as well, you'll be able to meditate on to visualize the deity. Practicing the highest Tantra path like this, using death as a quick path to enlightenment, is incredible. It is the quickest way to purify the defilements, the dualistic view. In other words, having prepared during the generation stage, on the basis of that realization, you then actualize the path-time Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya on the completion stage, actually ceasing, this is the most sophisticated level, ceasing the intellectually acquired defilements and the simultaneously born defilements. Eventually, you cut even the subtle defilements, the dualistic view, and in that moment, achieve the result time, three bodies, enlightenment. This is how you can enjoy death by using the tantric path, the quickest way to achieve enlightenment. So, okay, how are we going for time? I was late again as usual. What time is it? See, it's already 9 o'clock. It's 8:45 already. Time for you people to go. So I've got a feeling we should leave it there at our final one. I mean, Terry said this is the final one. It should have been, but we've got another one in November. When did we book it up? What day have we got in November?
November 10. We'll be sending.
I think that's really good. I think it's enough now because there's a lot more to go through. I want to go through, but there's no time. And even if I've been early, there's still no time. So I think just please, just get this book of Rinpoche no matter what, because we're all going to die. We are all dying. People, okay, we're all dying. I'm just surrounded by people and we're just all dying. We know it, but we're as thick as posts. We just don't want to know it. So this is such a great book. And it happens to have these really nice explanations of the death process in there, all in one place. You know, it's very helpful. Really, really helpful. And reading this lovely chapter on the yogis and that one. It's just such a good book to have, I beg you. And it's available in paperback, but also you can get it in digital for your Kindle and your iPad. And then this book of His Holiness, wonderful book, because all this death process is completely in the Vajrayana. It's completely related to the Vajrayana. It's a really helpful, it's a really practical way of understanding the different stages of death, and therefore understanding the three kayas, you know. There's lots more commentaries as well. There's amazing books around. There's another book of Lati Rinpoche, published in the 80s, edited by Jeffrey Hopkins, and it's called Death, Intermediate State and Rebirth. This is a really good book to study as well. He goes into a lot more detail, very fine detail there. That's a really delicious book. So I really encourage you between now and November the 10th, when I'll be back from, I'm in Adelaide a few more days, and then on Monday or Tuesday, I fly to Kathmandu via Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and then I'll be at Kopan a few days, and then we'll go on the trek. I hope I get up the mountain. I'm really worried I won't get up there because my lungs are terrible. I might have to have about 10 porters carry me. I'm joking. I mean, Jeff and Nina went with us. How are you guys? You going all right? You're nice and you enjoying your lovely place? You like it? You're happy there?
We're very happy. We're blissing out.
We are missing you here, Venerable.
Oh, darling, I'll come one day and visit you. I'll come. But you're liking it, are you?
Oh, yeah,
Thanks
absolutely.
very much. It's wonderful.
You made it lovely as you want. You got any visions? I never introduced you to Coral for the garden, did I? Do you want me to?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
I'll email you. I'll introduce you to Coral. Okay. Because you got to have a pure land around your house as well. But you're really enjoying it. I'm so happy. Wow.
But as you said, just like with the mind, you know, we have to weed out the garden. There's many, many, many weeds to pull out. So it's a purification practice.
I mean, I remember Venerable Renee said it takes months just to have the mind calm enough to stop all the constant thinking about daily life. He said it takes months for that just because you've got to get rid of all. I mean, just because we endlessly thinking daily life things. And for you guys, I mean, I think he said it took months for your mind sort of to forget all those things and be able to begin to get some concentration, you know. So anyway,
It might take us years, but
there you go. Well, we're going to see Nina and Jeff get wrinkled and walking around in their walker doing their meditations. Very good.
and still our minds didn't calm down. But Venerable,
and I'll be dead I'll be dead by then, hopefully. Not hopefully, I don't want to be dead at all, but I might probably be dead by then. So never mind. So listen, you people, I think it's enough for now. It's interesting information, isn't it? Do you agree it's interesting? It's very delicious, isn't it? Do you agree it's very delicious? It's very delicious, isn't it? It's very delicious.
And Venerable, we did
Huh?
prepare with all the students, we did prepare a little ending celebration, if you would allow us
really?
to
Yes.
do it, because some of them may not be there in November, so we'd really be grateful
Okay,
for a little bit of your time so we can say thank you.
okay, go on then.
So we're starting with a mandala offered in the center to thank you for all the teachings.
Good.
Sashi perki yukjeng meto Ramri rablingi niregyan pari Sange shindu mekche uvagi Dokunam tashila chepaksho Jetsun lama tanpakinam Geche kala Kien se tsi tsi Gita sampe jim mala Sapye cheki japa Vaptu so Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakami Achayami.
And dear Venerable, we would like to invite Therese. She'll give a presentation with her offerings.
Dear Venerable, thank you so much for teaching us the last 12 or 13 months. It was so amazing to see you nearly all weeks, and you did so much for us. You now even got up in the middle of the night. That's so wonderful. And we cannot repay your kindness. It's so great, but we still would like to offer you something. We did some observations at Kopan Monastery, what kind of statue we could offer you. And I would like to share a picture. It's a Namgyelma statue. It's now, yes, it's now, no, it's not completely finished yet. It's done in Kathmandu.
Oh, wonderful.
We
So I
would
better
like,
get a special place in my new house in New York to put it.
yes,
So I'm moving to New York in my new place in New York. I know exactly where I'll put it. This is so wonderful. I can't believe it. It's so beautiful.
wonderful.
This is very special.
And
Thank you so much.
we also asked Kopan Monastery which kind of puja we could let done for you, and they said most of the Namgyelma Tsetsung or Tsechok puja, which they did the monks at Kopan Monastery for your long life and health. And we also really request you to stay with us for a long time and teach us. We really need your help on the path. And we also have another little surprise for you, and I will come to that in a moment. First,
Okay.
I also would like to thank the whole Discovering Buddhism coordination team. First of all, I would like to thank Nina.
Let me see all the people again. Let me see all the people again. I like to see you all.
She wants to see us all.
So I think
stop the share and
yes, right now.
Here we go. Good, wonderful. Thank you, Therese. So kind, darling. Go on.
Yes. So first of all, I would like to thank Nina. I remember 1.5 years ago, Nina came to a board meeting of Laksam and said, I have this crazy idea. Let's do a whole Discovering Buddhism program with Venerable Robina. And I thought it sounds wonderful, but how should we be able to do that? And now I'm so happy that it all fall into place. And it is so wonderful. And then I talked to Nina and we said that we really would like to also offer something for the people who did the most work. And I share my screen again because we would like to offer a little gift to all the or the people who did the most of the work. We have here 5 Shakyamuni Buddha statues. So one will go to Lars. Because Lars did so much work, he hosted so many teachings, he led meditations, he organized the questions. Thank you, Lars, so much. And then one is going to Jeff. Jeff was leading most of the intensive practice days, and now he's even getting up in the middle of the night for doing this, as also in the coming Sunday. And then one statue is going to Christine, because Christine, she did a lot of work with compiling all the readings, all the handouts, which was hours of work. And then one statue is going to Christian. I think he's not here now, and maybe you have not seen him, but he's doing a lot of work in the background. He was editing and publishing all the videos, which was also hours of work. And then the last but not least, we would like to offer a statue to Tara. We were so lucky that you answered our call for a Buddhism program coordinator. You were coordinating everything. You wrote countless emails. You organized the online classroom. You took care of all the students. This was so wonderful. And I think, Tara, you are for Laksam, you are just like a Tara. Thank you so much. And we now just need to find a way to ship the statue to Northern Cyprus. So now I would like to give my word to Lars, who will share the screen with the surprise for Venerable.
But maybe one more. I want to thank one person. Maybe that Beth, a person in England, she worked with me and then eventually with Christine in turning all those teachings that Christine organized into the booklets you've got. That was Beth in the UK. So you can thank Beth, and I will thank Beth on your behalf.
Thank you, everyone.